Alright, this is Sashiko Live Streaming in English, January 31st, right? Friday. This is the live streaming in English. So if you have any questions in English, please let me know. Please leave the comments. Again, I will not probably answer the technical questions as I'm not going to demonstrate anything. It's not a teaching opportunity, but I will direct you to the information if there is one. I will talk about something related to Sashiko. I don't know what it's gonna be, but while I do Sashiko stitching, hello. Thank you so much for watching from everywhere in the world. Continued from the Japanese Sashiko stitching live. I will probably talk about language, Japanese language and English language, related to the Sashiko. A little later. It is very much related to the topic I introduced yesterday about Sashiko and art. I still feel that when somebody tells me that I'm the artist or what I do, Sashiko is the art, I still feel a little bit strange. And I will explain why, with explaining the difference between the English and also the Japanese from the language perspective. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this and if you're gonna come to the QuiltCon, please make sure to purchase the kit before the February 21st or 22nd. I will be in the QuiltCon 2020 in Austin, Texas. And if you are the one who is going to take the class, please check the website for more details. Everything else is going to be just let me get in the rhythm first so I can talk and stitch simultaneously. So, I feel that the Sashiko is sort of the language to us. I have several reasons to say that the Sashiko is like a language for us, but the main reason is that the same keyword, the ordinary. Sashiko is very ordinary, not special for me, not extraordinary for me. The very similar example that I can find is the language. Hello, どうもです。10時半からのは英語だけにしてるので、もしかしたら英語だけになっちゃうかもです。So the language is very similar to Sashiko from the perspective of ordinary. When you speak English, when I speak English, well, when I speak the mother language, for me it's Japanese, we really don't think it's special, right? Like it's always there. You don't really have to think that is something special. It is something extraordinary. It is the same as Sashiko. I understand for some people Sashiko is very unique, very special. So it can be like art. For example, I know some Japanese people who loves the English newspaper, like New York Times or any newspaper. They love the design of English alphabets, and they sometimes display that on the wall in the frame. And it can be pretty strange, I think, for some of the English speaker, because that's the daily thing, that's the ordinary newspaper, yet some people recognize that as the art. Sashiko goes to the same idea for me. Sashiko is very much the ordinary hand stitching, yet that's why I don't consider it as the art. It is unnatural for me to consider it as the art. But I can understand that there are people who consider Sashiko as the art. But at the same time, I don't want anybody to use the word art as the excuse to not to learn the Sashiko if they want to call their stitching Sashiko. Does that make sense? So it is perfectly fine for Japanese people to hang the English newspaper on the wall after framing it. It is perfectly fine to call it art. However, if they want to teach English, I want them to be able to speak or at least understand the basic of English. Does it make sense? That's how I feel about Sashiko. It is not exactly the same topic. It is just analogy, but when I need to explain the unnaturalness I feel about Sashiko and art, the language is probably the closest example I could come up with. So language, Sashiko is like a language, mother language for me. Therefore, it is very difficult for me to think as the extraordinary things to do. So maybe it may be extraordinary things for the others, and then therefore it may be the art. But I'm perfectly fine if people start calling Sashiko as the art. I have a lot to learn. I need more education to understand what art is to begin with. However, just only one hope is that I don't want anybody to use the Sashiko or word of Sashiko. I'm sorry. I don't want anybody to use the word of art as the excuse to not to learn deeper of Sashiko. Whew. Each language has pretty unique character too, right? Like I only know Japanese and English enough to make a comparison, but even like these two languages, Japanese and English, has a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. For example, the Japanese is the language of reading in between lines. We sometimes do not specify the subject when we know that the subject is already shared with each other. So let's say that I'm driving with you in the same car, two of us. We do not say where do we go or where are we going to go. We don't say that. We say we omit the subject of we because we, both of us, know that it is about us. So we don't really say that. So instead of saying like where do we go, where are we going to go, in Japanese we just simply say where go. I mean it's incorrect. It's incorrect in English, but in Japanese, if I say that where do we go, like if I included the word we when I speak in Japanese, that becomes the language so unnatural. Each language has that kind of characteristic. So is Sashiko. And it is perfectly fine for one stitchers to call Sashiko as the art. At the same time, if he or she talks about Sashiko on behalf of Japanese culture of Sashiko, then I want them to learn more when they talk about it. Whew. It's so difficult to talk and stitch and make sure that it's everything on the camera. But I think this is the best way to explain what is going on in my brain and what is going on with my feeling. Sashiko is very ordinary things for me, like language that you use, mother language we use every day. Therefore, somebody hanging that language or Sashiko on the wall saying that it's art is quite strange. At the same time, I feel happy that somebody considers what we do as art. But when they talk about Sashiko or that language or the one specific culture, especially when they spread the information about what it is. I want them to know what it is before interpreting it. So, there are a few misunderstanding. Not a misunderstanding. It is more like a shortage of information. Some people say that Sashiko is about slow stitch. Yes, Sashiko can have the characteristic of slow stitch. However, it is not equal. Sashiko is not equal to the slow stitch. It also depends on the definition of slow stitch. However, it is not equal. Some people say Sashiko is about mending. Yes, Sashiko can be a part of mending culture. Mending can be a part of Sashiko culture. However, Sashiko and mending is not equal. There's information missing there. Some people say that Sashiko is about recycling, upcycling, so we can use whatever we have. One can choose that, but it does not equal to that. So there's a lot of information missing, and we're human, so we only listen to what we want to listen. So if no matter what I say here, people will not change their standing point, especially if they use Sashiko as the marketing word. They cannot change it right now. But Sashiko is more than one simple definition. It's not only about slow stitch. It's not only about mending or visible mending or invisible mending, or it's not only about design or slow, whatever you can think of. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I can share more information here. So, the reason there's not that much information is, well, I explained that everywhere, but we, the Japanese, didn't write that much information left as a documents. Almost nothing written by Japanese about the history or those structure of Japanese. You know why? Because it was very ordinary. It was very natural for them to practice every day, so they didn't feel the need of writing down and recording it as a document. Same as language. If you have a dialect, if you feel language is a little bit different in terms of that, because many people still use that. So it might change. The language may change its form, but it's gonna be there. But let's say it's a very, very extreme example, but when there's like an internet override everything, and when we can do telepathy, when we can communicate without using our throat, without using our vocal cord, without using the grammar, without using one specific language, do we record how to use English? Well, the point is, yes, since we love the language, there will be somebody who will record it before that overrides. However, what if the language is something they don't want to keep doing that? If they don't want to talk, if they don't want to use the language, would they keep all the record to the next generation? Maybe and maybe not. Sashiko was not that. So when the Japanese was practicing Sashiko, Japan was a poor country. Not many people wanted to do Sashiko stitching, although that was their ordinary days. That was their regular days. That was their normal days. They stitched. But they didn't like that. They didn't want to keep stitching. If they could get the better fabric, they would have gotten that, but they couldn't. So that's something they didn't want to continue. So when the Japan started getting wealthier, they just decided not to continue Sashiko stitching, because that was not something they wanted to continue, as well as something they didn't think there was something special. Not many people left the documents behind, even how to stitch or how to do things. Pretty much as long as I know, as long as I understand, most of the Sashiko we can see right now is the revived version of like old Sashiko, traditional Sashiko. In 80s, like about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, probably 50 years ago, many Japanese many Japanese discovered the beauty of Sashiko, like probably 50 years ago. And then they started building a company or organization or those guild to revive the beauty of Sashiko. It has a name before Sashiko, let's say. It's usually named with the region. Like Pennsylvania Sashiko, if I'm going to do it right now, here today. So there are a lot of Sashiko, but as long as I know, those are more like a revived version of Sashiko based on their older generations. Like my family is like that too. I'm from that family. That's why I'm privileged. That's why I am doing it right now, because my grandma decided to revive it as the organization, the company, and based on the story of my grandma, fifth generations from me. Those people, fifth generation ago, about 200 years ago, 300 years ago, they actually practiced Sashiko. About 6 generations ago, I guess. 5, 6 generations ago, they still practice Sashiko as their daily, ordinary lives. It's way before the World War II, before the machinery kicked in. There was a Meiji revolution in Japan, and that's the time when Japan starting westernization got started. The Japanese started wearing something suit instead of the Japanese jackets. 5 generations ago from me, there were still people who kept practicing Sashiko stitching as their daily chore, like cooking, or that's kind of like a origin of the Sashiko we can kind of find today. But it's pretty much a revived version, and that's why I always recommend one person to kind of study from. Her name is Eiko Yoshida. I think she's one that who mainly revived the Sashiko we can see today. She doesn't have any book in English, but she has a lot of books in Japanese, and I think that's the most comprehended example or resources that I can find in Japan. But that is also a part of Sashiko culture, history. It's probably 1% of the whole culture history. So what we can do is pretty much just kind of imagine and synchronize our feeling to see how they were doing. And I don't think none of them actually felt Sashiko as the art in 200 years ago. So it was very much ordinary things for Japanese people in stitch, and then we now put a lot of values to what we do. Slow stitch, I don't think they wanted to stitch slower. They didn't have a sewing machine. They had a lot of project. Like, do you want to wash somebody's dish, or do you, like, if you don't have a dishwasher, would you like to wash the dishes extra slowly? You want to get it done, right? Like, if you have a pile of dishes, your job is to get it done as quick as possible. That is kind of the same level Sashiko is from there. So, well, the washing dishes can be a good idea too. Like, washing dishes can be a good example of art. Maybe for those who doesn't know any dishwasher, washing dishes might be like art. Maybe. Because it's super fast, right? But for those actually who washes the dishes, it's not art. That's kind of like a very rough, but it's kind of a good comparison, I think. I hope my stories make sense. It is not about good or bad. Please don't misunderstand that. I am okay. I'm perfectly fine when somebody admires our work as the art. I humbly accept it and I humbly take it, and I feel happy that what we do is art. Thank you. Thank you so much. But at the same time, I just don't want them to use the word art as the excuse to not to learn something more. This is the back side of the fabric. This is the back side of the fabric. And please don't ask why, because there's already answer why. And please watch the YouTube for the answers. So that's probably how I consider. Well, that's the reason I kind of don't want to publish a book, yet I probably have to publish a book to tell this one to the world. Practice or skill. I'm sorry. Maybe a certain level of practice. Because of the intentionally. Let me reread it. I'm sorry. So maybe at a certain level of practice, probably so. Like when the one person masters a skill, it could be considered as the art. For example, like Japanese calligraphy or just even Japanese writing, some non-Japanese people who don't know anything about Japanese language, they might consider it as the art. Because it's something new and it looks art, like a creative. So that is okay, that is perfectly fine. But when they see that Japanese language as the art, they will probably admire the beauty of the Japanese, yet they will not try to change that Japanese structure itself. For some reason in Sashiko, it is sometimes happening. Because there's not that much information, there's not that many Japanese people who kind of try to stand up and protect it. That's my concerns there. It is perfectly fine to share what Sashiko is with their interpretation as the art. That's perfectly fine. Again, I am very happy that some people feel Sashiko as the art. However, if one stood twisting the original, twisting the core part of Sashiko, which is the ordinary things to do, then it's a little bit different story. And since Sashiko became a big trend in 2019 last year, I started seeing some of those comments like Sashiko is the art, so we can do whatever we want, or Sashiko is the recycling or upcycling the materials, so we don't have to use the Sashiko thread, use whatever we have. True. The same times, it is using whatever we have is the waste of time and fabric. Because Sashiko thread is designed for Sashiko stitching, and after spending hours of stitching, the result has to be, for me, the result is supposed to be better than, at highest for me. So, and there's a reason you stitch. You want to make fabric stronger, and if the fabric doesn't become strong after that many hours of stitching, what's the point of doing Sashiko? So for me, thread does make a lot of difference before anything. But many people say that the Sashiko threads are expensive, so we should use whatever we have. That is one way to understand the waste of, the concept of mottainai. But for me, wasting time and wasting that fabric, possible actual project, is more waste than spending money on the thread. That's another reason I keep saying thread doesn't matter. This will be understood if one used the Sashiko thread, because they cannot go back to any materials, thimble, needle, thread, those threes are something I cannot compromise at all. fabric can be anything. I mean, I have a preference, but it can be anything. But those 3 thread, oops, not a thread. Yes, thread, thimble, needle, those cannot be compromised, and I cannot go back to, not I can. Many people say that they cannot go back to the previous one after using ours. Well, we spend so much time on investing what is the best for the Sashiko stitching. So, if you don't have any idea, please trust the experienced one first. I mean, you can always try to go back to the, something different. I'm not going to say that you have to use this one, otherwise I'm not going to say, blah, blah, blah. You can use any materials, but don't use the non-Sashiko thread for the Sashiko. It's so much waste. I'm sorry to say that, but it's a waste. I'm sorry, the fabric doesn't get stronger as much as you would have done with the Sashiko thread. Again, what is the point of Sashiko? For me, it is about making the fabric stronger so I can use it longer. So it is like there's a big core of Sashiko stitching, Sashiko culture, and because there's not that many information available, and there's a reason that there's not that many information available. Many people we can twist the original culture, which is perfectly fine. Again, culture is supposed to be altered over time. I am here to kind of stand for the Sashiko I know as a tradition. It is perfectly fine that the Sashiko change its form over time for some reasons. Like, it is perfectly fine Sashiko became the art after few years. If many decided that Sashiko is the art, I have to be there. Like, I will not change my opinion. I may change my opinion. Oops. Anyway, it doesn't really matter what I say, but at the same time, somebody got to stand up and say, wait, so this is the opinion, this is the insight, this is the perspective as the native Japanese, who happen to be born in the Sashiko family. I don't know if it's a privilege or curse, but it's probably a privilege. Happen to be able to speak English because I didn't want to take over this tradition. It's so interesting. Like, I did not want to take this culture as my life mission. I wanted to be somebody else. Of course I wanted to be somebody else. Who wants to stitch if there's a choice of not being able to stitch? I wanted to make better money. There's a lot of way to make our life better. IT, internet programming, banking, investment. Like, there's a lot more way to make money, and probably it might be better off than stitching the fabric and talking to the cell phone. So when I was young, when I was younger, I of course wanted to take that route. So I did not want to inherit this culture. As the result, I came to the US to study English as well as some... おいやい、こんにちはって言える？さくらち、そこで顔こするのはダメだわ。そこで顔こするのはダメだ。お、日本語出てしまったわ。さくらち。Sorry. さくら、ここおいで。Sorry, the camera is shaking because of my cat. If I can give you the best recommendation, don't get a cat if you're serious in Sashiko stitching. It's like she's stitching with me. I don't want to stitch you. I don't want to stitch you. I know you need my attention, but come on. So these stitches, after using so many times, after washing a lot, this... Sakura, seriously, like, I don't want to kick you out. These stitches become a part of fabric, so it does not come off that easily. However, this is one exception. This one is one exception. So the cat nail can pick up the stitches and could destroy the Sashiko stitched fabric. So if you are serious in Sashiko, cat might not be the best idea to have. Like, I made a beautiful Sashiko stitched denim, and I was gonna use it for like a long time, 10 years or 20 years, whatever. But she sleeps on my lap sometimes when she kind of yarn. She catch that thread with her nail, and then it kind of picks it up, and it kind of destroys the stitches. And also, if she plays with the thread, then it's gonna be one big expensive cotton ball. So cat might not be the best idea to have if you're like, not in the studio for sure. Not in the studio for sure. Like, I stitch in my house, in my living room, and everybody has a right to be here, so I'm not gonna kick her out. But if I'm gonna have a studio, no cat. Don't play with the guy. Where did it go? I said don't play, Leo. Not Leo, Sakura. Thank you. She's really cute. We picked up her from the shelter last winter, so has been a year since. She enrich our life. She sleeps with me. She sleeps on me. She sleeps everywhere I do. So thanks to her, my productivity is about 30% of my 100%, probably like 70% less. I used to be more efficient, more productive, but not anymore because of her. Thanks to her. It's not about productivity, it's not about efficiency. And I completely forgot what I was talking about. So let's enjoy the stitching. Completely forgot what I was talking about. I was talking about it's not a good idea to have a cat when you do Sashiko stitching. But yeah, Sashiko is very ordinary stitching for me and for the other Japanese people. Yeah, I came to the US to study not Sashiko. I came to the US to study something else, not to be the next generation of Sashiko family. Yet I kind of end up with here doing the Sashiko, so I respect many people who did the translation, who did the interpretation of Sashiko, and then wrote the book or wrote those articles in English. At the same time, I think they know it too, but that's why they tried to learn Japanese as a language. But it is quite important to learn the language to understand the culture itself. So sometimes people ask me what is the best way to understand Sashiko as the core, like as the practice of Japanese. They ask me what is the best way to do it. I have two answers. First, you keep stitching. The second thing is learn Japanese language, not the stitching itself only. If they can communicate Japanese as a language, then there will a lot better opportunity to learn the core of Sashiko. Again, Sashiko is the ordinary things for the ordinary things for Japanese. So understanding the ordinary things about Japanese is pretty much close to or similar or even exactly the same as learning the language too. So that's how I kind of recommend. Let's say, what is the next step after learning the Sashiko stitching or the basic posture, basic movement? People say, what is the best way to learn Sashiko more and more? Of course, going to Japan, living in Japan is a great idea to do it. But at the same time, learning the language is one thing that I recommend. I mean, I didn't know what would be Americans' mindset like until I learned English. Language, like, we human are kind of shifting to the society where we do not have to learn the second language. The Google or like those AI can translate everything for us. That is very true. That is very true that we don't have to probably have to speak the same language, and we don't have to worry about that miscommunication. However, in order to learn the culture itself deeply, learning the culture, learning that language is quite important. I probably said it in the beginning, but the Japanese is the language of reading between lines. We sometimes do not say the subject in the conversation, especially when we know each other that it is about some specific people. But that's how Japanese communicate each other too. So we have a lot of mutual understanding of assumptions. We understand mutually before we even talk. That it can be a very big problem for me when I speak in English, because I sometimes omit that explanation, especially when I feel like everything will be mutually explained. That could create a lot of disagreement, misunderstanding. One of the problem is like, one of the misunderstanding I had a year ago, 2 years ago, was that I thought, I mutually understood, I for some reason understood that everybody who practices Sashiko is somewhat respecting the Japaneseness behind Sashiko. At least, I did not know there was the people who didn't know that Sashiko was the Japanese word. So that was my presume. That was my presume. Come on, my English doesn't kick in. I did not know that. I just learned that there are people who didn't know the Sashiko as the Japanese word. That's why I keep saying, like, my understanding of cultural appropriation in Sashiko is that I am okay with anybody calling their stitching Sashiko unless as long as they understand, they respect the Japanese culture behind it. It is simply because Sashiko is the Japanese word and Japanese culture. I don't want them to override or repaint the original culture. So as long as they care the Japanese that's behind it, I kind of encourage them to call Sashiko as well if they like it. But if they don't know, if they don't care about the Japanese that's behind the Sashiko, I don't want them to call their stitching Sashiko. That lead the question, like, why do they have to call it Sashiko if they don't care? There gotta be some names for that. So, but that was my come on, I don't know this word. That was my assumption before the discussion that led me to the kind of nasty discussion, because I didn't know they didn't care about Sashiko's Japanese culture behind it. So that's my hope, actually. Nobody can deny that Sashiko is the word, Japanese word, because it is. And I'm happy when somebody calls this teaching Sashiko, when they respect that culture with Japaneseness behind it. Okay, I've been talking for 45 minutes. I will probably stop stitching after this thread. If you have any questions, please let me know. I will either answer it here or direct you to the videos on YouTube. I'm not gonna just demonstrate here for your questions because this is not a place for that. But otherwise, I will keep stitching, and please leave the comments on the YouTube. This will be on the YouTube after 24 hours. After the Instagram stops sharing the stories, I will leave this data on the YouTube. If you are watching this in the YouTube, please leave the comments if you have any question. I'm sorry, not it. When you are watching this, and if you have any questions on YouTube, sorry, if you have a come on, let me calm down. when you're watching this on YouTube, and then if you have any questions, please leave the comments so I can talk about it in the next live streaming. I try to do this live streaming every Tuesday, Friday at 10:30 Eastern Time, New York time, AM. After following the Japanese live streaming, I used to try to make the more like convenient time for us, like, you know, Wednesday night or Saturday morning, blah blah blah. But this is the probably easiest time for me to do the live streaming because it's right after the Japanese one. So I try to make the Japanese live streaming shorter and then spend a little more time on the English one. So it would be great if you keep watching it, and if you keep giving me the feedback, I will try to... Again, I will do everything I was doing last year too. I will make some Sashiko story videos, which is much shorter, like 8 minutes or 10 minutes. So you don't have to you don't have to spend 45 minutes to get one core message from me. I will do that. I will try to do that. I will add more tutorials, videos, stuff like that. But since I'm single member doing everything by myself, simply there's not enough time for that. And if I waited till the day I film myself, edit it, and that's gonna probably take another month or so to share what I want to share. This is the alternative. Talking to the smartphone while I stitch without script. So this is the Sashiko Live Streaming without any script, without any editing. You're watching it as a live, so I didn't hide anything. I didn't edit anything. I didn't first forward. I didn't slow it. Just this is as is, and that's how I want to share the culture. No editing, not a superficial. You will see exactly the same thing when you visit my house. It's, you know, you will see my face too, but, you know, that's what I want to do. All right, I will show you the front side. This, I hope I can make this jacket before the CultCon. Oh, by the way, the denim I was stitching, I will put on the pending because I just realized that that denim is too big for my butt, and I didn't want to wear that to the denim, I mean the QuiltCon. So this is the Sashiko stitching as of now. I'll probably finish it. Probably I can finish it before the QuiltCon. Alright, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a very good weekend. It's gonna be a nice day out today and tomorrow. It's a very weird winter. Thank you for Lily. Thank you, Lily-san. Okay, so have a good weekend. Enjoy Sashiko, and I will keep you updated. See you next time. Bye bye.